Welcome to SpanReads, not your typical rereads podcast, a 17-chart series where we reread the Cosmere and are giant nerds about it. Today, we will be talking about Hero of Ages in the context of the Cosmere. Joining me is Mish.
Also firstRainbowRose.
Also joining me is Ian.
Hey, I'm your writer.
And Matt.
I'm Comatose on the forums and Discord.
Also Rosemary.
Hi, I'm Kaymyth.
And Kadie.
Hello, I'm Aon Ene.
And I'm Jessie or Lady Lameness. The spoiler policy for today will be full spoilers for all of the Cosmere up to the release of Rhythm of War. That's the last book we've had. If you've got information after Rhythm of War, lucky you. We don't have it yet. But that is where we will be going up to today.
Hello from the past, if that's the case.
Yes. Hello from the past.
So, first off, I want to say I didn't realize that Milan was in Hero of Ages.
I always forget.
I was like,
she was an iconoclast from the youngest baby Milan era. She has always been pushing the Kandra envelope of what is appropriate, and it's just so interesting to see her in her baby form here and compare her to which becomes in Era 2. This just like appropriate? What's that?
Yeah,
I love that her and her friends are like the Kandra equivalent of hipsters.
Yes.
Like,
I say more like punks, because hipsters aren't. I think they're just more like iconoclastic punks. They're just like, yeah, we're going to push the envelope, because hipsters are like, I liked it before it was cool. And they're like, we don't, what's cool? We're just.
I don't know. I kind of see hipsters and punk as two of the same thing in different eras with slightly different crowds. Like they're scenesters. Like they're on the like cutting edge of like Kandra-ness. So
yeah, and Milan is one of the best characters in the Cosmere again.
Oh, she is 100%.
And just seeing her origins again is so much fun.
And it's so funny reading this and remembering how little we had. Because I remember even like when I first read this, it was like, I want more of her. Like she's not in it much. And that's why like I was so excited when she popped up in Era 2. But she made a decent impression even in these books.
Speaking of like wider Cosmere implications, like this is kind of the first book that gave us wider Cosmere implications. Like it's the first mention of Adenalsium. It's like the first one that really starts to dig into the shards.
I mentioned
like the nature of the three realms, like
and the whole thing's 16. There are 16 shards. We don't know it yet in these books, but that's how many there are.
My favorite thing about the introduction of Adenalsium is in the original print, it's mentioned once in the book and it's misspelled.
My copy still has that, and I'm reading the 10-year anniversary edition.
Yeah, which is...
Oh, but it's the UK 10-year anniversary
UK,
edition.
Yeah, UK 10-year. But it still has that misprint. That hasn't been fixed.
Because I'm trying to flip through it and find it, and I can't, but it's like Adenalsium.
Missing the L.
Missing the L.
Yeah. And doesn't it have an I instead of an L? Like a lowercase I?
It's like Adenasium?
Which would kind of make... Because that's how I remember saying it and spelling it all the time. Because I remember it being... I had that stuck in my head. Because Adonai, spelled Adonai, is the word... Is it Hebrew for Lord, I think?
So?
Yeah.
Which is,
right.
I'm assuming, and it's like a common word used in Hebrew for like a god or a deity. So I'm assuming that's kind of the root Brandon was maybe using for Adenalsium. And maybe,
Sazed learns to spell it by whenever he next put it in like Oathbringer or whatever.
Well, I think it got corrected at some point.
No, yeah, it did. Like, my edition has it corrected, but...
I don't want to dive into it too much because I think it's better for our Secret History episode. But it was fun reading this after having read Secret History and seeing all the different times where it's where you're like, oh, it's Kelsier, oh, it's Ruin, oh, it's Kelsier, oh, it's Ruin.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Kelsier's fingerprints are all over this book. You just don't know it until you get to Secret History.
Yeah. Though, like, we knew, like, a couple of them, like, because of the annotations. Like, we knew that, like, when Spook wakes up, like, that was actually Kelsier. And we know that it's actually Kelsier's voice, like, right before Vin ascends is, like giving the, like, the mist, like, giving you power, which, like, graphic audio, like, does that in Kelsier's voice, and we're just like, it's so good, so good.
A quote that I really liked was when Vin is chasing the Mistborn in Phaedric City, and if I remember correctly, that's actually Kelsier because it's just after she's been scared away from Hoyd.
Sometimes
the first time it is.
Yeah, the first time.
And then Ruin impersonates him later.
But the first time is Kelsier, and she makes a comment about how they're good without being excellent, which I just thought was so funny.
Well, doesn't she also comment on the fact that it reminds her of early days of training with Kelsier?
I can't remember.
You might.
I don't remember.
Kelsier might have made that comment.
Well, and then Secret History recontextualizes a lot that didn't make it, fixes some of the parts that didn't work in Hero of Ages, like, and they're little things, like, this is a great book, but like Vin's random feeling that, like, oh, I shouldn't go talk with Hoyd, which, to be fair, like, Vin is a gut person, like, that's not super out of character, but knowing that Kelsier was like, no, that guy's bad news, don't talk to him.
But it's never explained in Hero of Ages, so you're kind of left wanting.
Exactly.
The funniest part about that is it really wouldn't have been a bad thing for her to talk to Hoyd. It would have been fine. Kelsier just doesn't like him.
Yeah. Well, of course, Hoyd beat him up. Like,
so honestly, Kelsier had that coming.
Yeah. But like, yeah, but by like, Hoyd couldn't do anything to hurt Vin because that's his nature.
Yeah.
But he probably would have actively tried to help, and he might have had some tidbit of information they wound up having to get someplace else. He was there, ready to give her the info, whatever info he had, and then Kelsier ruined it.
Yeah, that's probably why he's there in the first place. It's like, whatever fortune manipulations he has, like, oh, I need to be in that point, likely to give Vin some information, but like, it just didn't happen. Like, a missed point of providence.
There we go. Now I have a question to ask Brandon, because this is random.
What information would Hoyd have given Vin had she talked to him?
Next time there's a Q&A, I plan on asking that, because I wanted to.
That is an excellent question.
I'm kind of wondering, though, like, the thing is, like, Hoyd on Scadrial is a lot more like, it seems like he's more like on his own, like, I'm doing my own thing, and that's why he's more in the background. Like, he doesn't take as active a role as he does in Stormlight. And I wonder if part of that is, we know, like, I don't really see Hoyd necessarily being super worried about Ruin, like, rampaging the Cosmere, whereas, like, Hoyd hates Odium, right? Like, he is actively, like, helping the heroes to, like, thwart Odium and doing everything he can. Whereas here, sometimes it feels like he's just kind of there doing his own thing. And yeah, maybe he doesn't want Scadrial to be destroyed, but I don't know. I've never gotten the vibe that Hoyd was, like, super invested in saving the day in these books like he is in Stormlight Archive.
It's all about his quest for instant noodles. He wants Scadrial to give him his damn noodles.
Yeah, like, I guess that also goes into the fact that, like, Ruin isn't as scary of a shard as Odium is, which is, like, just looking at them, like, oh, like, this is the shard of hatred. This is the shard of, like, the end of all things, destruction incarnate. Odium way scarier as a threat. Like, it's this, like, interesting dichotomy of, like,
Yeah, normally you wouldn't see it that way, or at least I wouldn't. Normally I'd say, oh, hatred is bad, yes, but like the actual personification of ruin is horrible. And I love that Brandon kind of flips that on its head and makes it so that odium is the bigger bad.
I think a piece of this is probably the vessels, the holders, because odium was like on board with odium from the beginning, and whereas
Ati was a kind and gentle man.
Yeah, he was slowly subsumed. He fought his shard's intent until it ate him.
Yeah, and it's like, but like he definitely shaped it to be like, I am like an expression of natural forces. Like there is no malice to ruin.
Yeah.
Really.
Whereas odium is nothing but malice.
Yeah.
Whereas like another person, like there could be a malicious ruin. Like they could have like expressed the intent in a slightly more sinister way.
I remember when I first read this book being like, he's being so specific with the descriptions of the body that fell after preservation died and then the body that fell after ruin died. And I was like, are these supposed to be like cameos or something? And I was trying to figure it out. And for a while I was like, oh, like, because Ati has red hair, I was like, is that supposed to be Rand? Because I had, you know, because I knew Brandon loved Wheel of Time. And I'm like, okay, like maybe this is like a Wheel of Time reference. But
they are cameos, but they're of characters that he hasn't written the original stories for yet.
Exactly, yeah. Because, yeah, like he talks about Lyris having like a prominent nose and dark hair, I think. And yeah, like it's very like specific. Like he doesn't just say a body fell from the sky, which he could have done. So he obviously knows somewhat who these people are and what they look like.
If no one else has anything else to say on that, I have a new thing.
Sure.
Yeah.
With the context of Era 2, I want to make a comparison. Because I often see people joking about how, like, in the second book of Eras 1 and 2, there's a who's the Kandra spy plotline. And that's cool. But there's a specific plot beat in books 3 of both of those series. Hero of Ages, this one, and Bands of Mourning, that I haven't seen people mention before, personally. Which is the, like, kind of a noble keep infiltration by a couple, where the main character and their romantic partner go to a party that's being held by an enemy of theirs, and infiltrate it. And one of them is like, okay, I'll cause a distraction. The other one's like, okay, I'll go off and do our thing. And then the person who goes off and does stuff ends up getting into a trap that was specifically planned from the beginning to trap them.
The new Saren arc, now that you say that, definitely has Fadrek's arc vibes in general. Like there's a similar feel for sure.
Wax comes out of that a lot better than Vin did.
Yeah, that too. That's true.
The other thing that's similar, I just realized, is we get the Bands of Mourning at the end of Bands of Mourning, and you have a superpowered Allomancer, and Hero of Ages also ends with a superpowered Allomancer.
A third thing is that both things have like a god appearing to somebody at their lowest moment and like giving them like the will to continue and save the day.
Though,
or at least save part of the day.
But Sazed won't do the interpretive dancing that Lyris did.
Yeah. I always think of, there's this game we play sometimes. It's kind of like a charades game, but it gets harder every time, but you're using the same clues, so you know what pool to pick from.
I know that game. I've lost the name.
The last level of it, though, is charades, you can't talk, and you're under a blanket. And
the blanket is new.
Yeah. Oh, well, I've seen a couple different versions, but so there's one level that I've played where you have to do charades under a blanket. And I always think of that when I read Preservation Scene of like, because he's like, not only is he doing charades, he can't talk, he's made of mist, which I can't imagine makes it easier.
We miss out on like the facial expression of him being just like, I'm like,
yeah. And we know from Secret History that at that point, like Lyris Fuzz, even like in the cognitive realm, is starting to like like puff away and be less distinct.
I'm really excited to reread Secret History.
Yeah.
Another thing I want to touch on that I haven't gotten to the chance to talk to on Shardcast is the dichotomy of ruin and preservation, like of their investors. Because like we know that they are the most diametrically opposed shards. It's like they're the only like perfect set of opposites.
That we've seen so far.
Like, no, Brennan has explicitly said they're the most, like, of
balanced.
any of them. None of them have a perfect opposite, bar none.
And as of
which makes sense. Like,
and as of Rhythm of War, how much? Like, we know most of the shards. So
we know 14 of 16.
14, yeah. So, and the ones we know, at least, it's hard to know how the intents are being interpreted. Like, but. Yeah, like we don't like Whimsy doesn't have like a clear opposite.
Yeah, it's like you can't get more opposed than change and not change. But like as we see, like when like Vin like gives Ruin a kamikaze hug and just like murders both of them in like one go, that like when used in opposition, like they don't mix well, and like they kind of annihilate each other. Like that's kind of like how that whole process worked, which is interesting in terms of like the light anti-light, like investiture anti-investiture dichotomy. It's just like how similar is like ruin and preservation interacting with what happens there.
Well,
which is an answer we don't have yet, but it's like it's in my brain.
And it's interesting you say that because Brandon has had wobs about how harmonium or et metal or whatever you want to call it is really unstable, which also kind of reminds me about like Navani and Raboniel's experiments with the light and anti-light. So that's kind of, it's amazing how far we've come Cosmere wise since this book. When this book was like, well, like Rhythm of War was a big like Cosmere lore drop book. Like the stuff Brandon was giving away about the Cosmere was kind of like blowing my mind every chapter. And like this is the last time I felt like that, like reading Rhythm of War, I feel like, because like this book I was just like, my mind is being blown.
If you want an amusing blast from the past, go look up the Q&A with Brandon after the book was released on the Time Wasters Guide.
Yeah.
And all of the questions that we asked, those were, we were baby cosmonauts.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like this episode is a little hard because like this book is so foundational that it's like it's hard to get back to it because it's like there's just like a wealth of information like where we are and like where this book is.
Yeah, like the concept of shards. Like, well, and like we didn't know that all shards weren't like for so I think a lot of like the fandom theories were so shaped by this book because ruin and preservation are the first shards we saw in detail. And both working, right? Like in the other books, even when we didn't know there were shards there, the shards that were there were like shattered or not working as well. And so it's and what you said about them mixing is interesting to me because in Secret History they mention that it looks like Ruin is trying to shatter preservation, but like he doesn't quite know how. Like he doesn't, unlike Odium, And I wonder if part of that is it would be harder for Ruin to shatter preservation because of how like opposed they are.
That point also, you still have Laris's cognitive shadow directing things. It isn't until Laris that finally dies, the final death, that Ruin rushes in to try to shatter it, and then Kelsier says, "Nope, I'm gonna pick it up."
But I don't know, maybe I was reading too much into this, but the sense I got is like Odium in that situation could have shattered preservation, and that it was either like Ruin's wasn't doing it efficiently, or because he didn't know, or something else was at play.
I think, like, because it's Chris that's commenting on it, and so we'll have this conversation again, like in our Secret History episode, I guess.
Yeah,
it's also hard to talk about this book without talking about Secret History now.
Yeah, because like I believe like Chris's comment was like that Ruin doesn't know how to splinter a shard.
Yeah,
so it's like I think it's a knowledge problem. But like
Odium's done it a few times, and he's screwed it up a few times, and he's gotten better at it.
I would wonder whether Ruin would have more of an advantage or a disadvantage trying to splinter preservation because they are so diametrically opposed. I wonder how that would play into things.
How much would it hurt Ruin to dig in hard enough to actually splinter him?
Yeah.
Or even from a knowledge perspective, like I kind of think about how the metal blindness blinds them both. Like what if because they're so opposed, they kind of blind each other a little bit? So it even might be harder for Ruin to learn how to shatter, like because it's so hard for him to even know preservation, that like obtaining that knowledge about preservation might be hard. I don't know. This is getting into like crazy realmatic shard stuff, so it's hard to
it's amazing how much we still don't know and understand. It's like the more we know, the less we know. And it's amazing.
Makes me wish that I was around in those earlier days when books were just coming out, and that I could have been here talking about things then, instead of coming in after Oathbringer when we already knew a lot.
We're still babies, though.
Oh, yeah.
I think.
Because like
I think we'll look back on this in 10 years and be like, oh, you sweet summer children. You didn't have back 5 of Stormlight.
Yeah, because like I can remember, because when I joined, it's like, I know Warbreaker was already out, and like Way of Kings might have already been out. But like the Cosmere like really wasn't as well known like as it is now. Like it was still like very much cameos, to the point where like I heard about like the Cosmere and I'm like, that sounds fake. Like it's like these worlds like look nothing like each other. It's like they can't be connected. Like, and I'm a fool. Like I am so wrong. And now I'm like, I see the connections everywhere.
Well, and that's so funny how like the Cosmere context has changed. Because like you look from like an aesthetic or casual perspective, and the Final Empire looks nothing like Roshar, and both of them don't look like the Elantris world at all, right? But we're so trained in like Cosmere lore that it's like, oh, but you boil it down to like intent and investiture, and it's really all the same with different expressions. It's just kind of funny.
And I'm sure there are things coming down the pipeline that are going to blow our minds.
Hopefully.
Okay, well, thank you for watching, everyone. You can find us at 17shard.com for your news, discussion, theories, and fun that you could ever want. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, SoundCloud. You can leave us a review on iTunes, subscribe on YouTube, and also support us on Patreon. See you all next time. Bye!
Hey.
Bye.